I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
And plan your vote.
Aronimink Golf Club sets the stage for the biggest names in women's golf, who will have their major moment. The KPMG Women's PGA Championship, October 8th through 11th.
Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election,
urging them what?
I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. The stakes for democracy herself too high to let a statement like that one get lost in the bluster, the interruptions, the boorish behavior, and the stunts we saw last night from Donald Trump. Too high to ignore that the incumbent president of the United States of America said before tens of millions of people on live television that he will not commit to accepting the results of the election and may even tolerate violence from his supporters as the ballots are counted. We saw it before to a lesser degree in 2016 when Trump repeated over and over and over on the campaign trail that the election was rigged against him. So we know this is what he does when he thinks he's losing. But now, 4 years later, with his presidential legacy and his brand on the line, Trump is working overtime to undermine confidence in democracy itself, to discourage people from voting in the first place, and to plant the seeds for a legal challenge after the polls close, no matter how baseless his case may be. We point it all out now, not just because he said it last night, but because the pattern suggests he'll only pick up the pace of these attacks on democracy as his re-election prospects continue to slip away, as we see more headlines like this one from the Washington Post, showing a surge of mail-in voting for Democrats, including in key states like Florida and North Carolina. It's a surge described by a Republican strategist in that piece as, quote, stunning. The Post reporting that it's, quote, causing alarm among GOP party leaders and strategists that President Trump's attacks on mail-in voting could be hurting the party's prospects to retain not just the White House, but also the Senate this year. A Snap poll showed Joe Biden coming out of last night's debate a clear winner, with national and battleground polls already showing Joe Biden way out in front and holding on to the clear path to victory in November, and Election Day now only 34 days away, which means that we can expect more headlines like those to deepen the intensity of Trump's campaign against democracy, one that, according to Thomas Friedman in a column out in today's New York Times, poses an existential threat to the United States. He knows a bit about that because he spent a career covering civil wars and the collapse of states. He writes this, quote, "I can't say this any more clearly. Our democracy is in terrible danger, more danger than it has been in since the Civil War, more danger than after Pearl Harbor, more danger than during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and more danger than during Watergate. When extremists go all the way and moderates just go away, the system can break, and it will break. I saw it happen. I would like to think that such a thing could not happen in America. I'd like to think that, but I am very, very worried." Joe Biden, who every single poll shows is ahead with a very stable and unchanging lead, offers an example of why people are turning to him for stability and hope.
The American people will decide who the next president of the United States will be, period. So I'm urging the American people, go out and vote. Show up. If you can vote early, vote early. Vote whatever way is most convenient for you, but vote. And if you show up in large enough numbers, nothing is going to change. I promise you. If, in fact, we win this election, this president will step down. It's a lot of bravado. He has no alternative. The American people will not stand for it.
That is where we start this hour with former Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. Also with us, contributor to the GRIO and politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University, our friend Jason Johnson, and former chief spokesman for the Justice Department, Matt Miller's here. Lucky for us, all three are MSNBC contributors. You're also all brutally honest with me and with our viewers. And I really want to know from you first, Claire McCaskill, is he for real, or do you think if it's some very clear defeat for him that he plays the martyr and, you know, packs up his twiddlywinks and goes home?
I believe that in his heart he is a coward. This is not a man of great courage. I think he's a phony. I think he's looking for a fig leaf. I believe he thinks he's going to lose, and he wants to have an excuse because he doesn't want to confront that he is going to be rejected by the American people. So I do not believe. Now, having said that, all things are possible with this guy. You know, Nicole, and let me just take 1 minute here, because I had calmed down, okay? I had a couple of hours this morning. I drank some chamomile tea. I did a little meditation. I calmed down. And then I heard what he said. I don't know who the Proud Boys are. Now, it was the story coming out of the debate. It is all they were talking about in the White House this morning. It is all they were talking about on his network, Fox News. For him to stand there and not reject the ideology of the Proud Boys, the hate, the white supremacy, the misogyny, the anti-Semitism, for him to not reject that, instead lie and say, I don't know who the Proud Boys are. How stupid does he think we are? And it is just infuriating. And anybody who tries to say that what he did today somehow fixes last night, no, no, no. It makes it much worse, because he is not rejecting white supremacy. He is not rejecting their violence. He is not rejecting their vigilantism. He is not rejecting what they're willing to do for him if he crooks his little finger. And that is what's infuriating about this man. That's why he's going to lose, and I do think he'll go off into the distance with his tail between his legs.
I'm sorry for the time you spent drinking tea and meditating, but I need you to keep going, Claire.
Well, it really is just frankly unbelievable, isn't it? How can he say, look in the camera and say, I don't know who the Proud Boys are? I mean, he knows who the Proud Boys are. His staff's told him all morning. I mean, Google it. For goodness sake, Google it. They're a hate group. And he will not say it because he wants them. He wants them on his side. That should be enough right there to reject this man wholly and fully. Tom Friedman's right. We should be worried that this guy has gotten in the Oval Office and dirtied it up with this kind of hate. It is outrageous for our country that we all love. Okay. Go on to somebody else. I got to take a breath.
No. Jason, no. Look, I appreciate it. I mean, I felt the same way. And I said last night after I watched it that you know, it was like watching an abusive relationship. Trump's the abuser and the country is the abused. And Jason, I wrestle every single day with how much Trump to show the viewer. I am as restrained and limited as I can be without hiding the news from the viewer. Mm-hmm. But having to watch him for 90 minutes bully and, you know, as we said, that boorish behavior, I guess the other side of it that maybe can restore some of our faith, let us ease up on, and God bless Claire if chamomile is all it takes for her these days. I'm way beyond that. If the polls are right, I guess the counterpoint would be it's not working. What do you think?
Well, Nicole, it's never been working, right? Remember, the guy lost by 3 million votes to Hillary Clinton. Like, Trumpism has never been about the majority of the population. But then again, you know, most dictators aren't necessarily that popular. Hitler didn't rise to power because the majority of people wanted him. He rose to power because he had a condensed and very passionate group of people who were willing to back him. That's how dictators come to power. It's not usually because they're that popular. It's because they're willing to do things that the rest of society isn't willing to do. And that's where I am primarily concerned, because here's the thing. Yes, I think Donald Trump is a coward. I don't think Donald Trump is about that life. I don't think Donald Trump is really willing to do anything that will sacrifice himself, but he'll sacrifice other people. He'll send other people out to do violent things. What's the most basic thing a president is supposed to do? Protect the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, in 2016, he was saying, Russia, can you hear me? And now he's asking for the Proud Boys. He's literally inviting foreign and domestic enemies into the United States to destroy this country. And you have to remember, Donald Trump doesn't care if America gets destroyed. All he cares about is if he stays in power. So I saw last night as the beginning of a very dangerous salvo. We saw it in Virginia, where we saw right-wing groups trying to intimidate people voting. That's what's going to continue. That's the danger of what we see right now.
You know, Matt Miller, I see it the same way as our friends Claire and Jason Johnson do. I just want to sort of empty my notebook and tell you my understanding of how the Trump side sees this. I'm told that the campaign senior management viewed last night as a disaster, that Bill Stepien is incredibly frustrated with his candidate's inability to do anything to change his standing, which is that he is losing. They understand that he is losing and he is likely to lose. And this is how I understand their strategy in attacking the vote itself, that their plans, sort of legally and politically, are to challenge the states with universal mail-in vote. I know that includes at least New Jersey, Nevada, and a few others. But I'm not trying to narrow their offenses because they're vast. They're to everyone. As I said, it was like watching him sort of batter the whole country with his abusive rule-breaking of a sort of sacred tradition of the American political system. But I wonder if they're not showing some leg on their political weakness and showing us that they, too, know that his defeat is most likely imminent.
Look, I think all these things are related. I think the reason why you see them pulling out the stops and you see reports that they're considering trying to have state legislators come in after the vote and declare that the electors in those states are given to Donald Trump no matter what the votes, no matter how the votes were actually cast. Those things are all related to the fact that he's been down quite dramatically in the polls, basically for 6 months now. Since Joe Biden captured the Democratic nomination, this race hasn't really gotten that close. It's never gotten closer than, say, a 7-point lead or so for Joe Biden. And that's why I think you see the president behaving that way. The problem is it's when you take the totality of the president's remarks together, they are all so dangerous. It's bad enough that he's always been unwilling to condemn white supremacy. It's been one of the most disqualifying things about him from the beginning. But when you combine that call for the Proud Boys to stand by with him saying, as you showed in the clip that started out this segment, that he wants his supporters to come to the polls, you have him refusing to accept or refusing to pledge that he'll accept the election results, you get this toxic stew where you could easily see that in the days after the election, if it's close and he's not willing to accept it, the Proud Boys who heard him say, stand by, actually do come out to the polls, either on election day to try to intimidate people or in the days after to try to intimidate those who are counting the votes. It is, I think, the most irresponsible and dangerous thing we've ever heard from him and really that we've heard from any president in modern history.
I want to stick with the facts on this. Christopher Wray, my dog is in here pushing me. I think she thought I needed some canine therapy in here. Christopher Wray has knocked down this idea that there's any sort of massive voter fraud going on in this country. But on the other side, Donald Trump has an ally in this effort, not just in his campaign, but in his sitting attorney general. I want to show you Barr spreading the disinformation on earlier this month with Wolf Blitzer. Let's watch that.
This is playing with fire. This is playing with fire. We're a very closely divided country here. And if people have to have confidence in the results of the election and the legitimacy of the government, and people trying to change the rules to this methodology, which, as a matter of logic, is very open to fraud and coercion, is reckless and dangerous. And the people are playing with fire.
We have not seen, historically, any kind of coordinated national voter fraud effort in a major election, whether it's by mail or otherwise.
So, Jason Johnson, I mean, if the word of the sitting FBI director isn't enough for you, Ben Ginsburg, who's a longtime Republican election lawyer, wrote an op-ed to the same effect, that while Republicans have been searching for the mysterious voter fraud scandal for decades and decades and decades, the only one committing it in plain sight is Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, you know, Nicole, the idea of voter fraud, and remember this goes back to, 2016, people came here and illegally voted. It never made any sense, right? If I sneak in the United States, I'm trying to stay under the radar. Really down, I'm going to try and register to vote. So it's always been a lie. It's always been sort of a nonsense sort of excuse. But what's been most damaging and most concerning, I keep pointing this out, is, regardless of what the polls say now, you still have DeJoy trying to destroy the post office processing centers. You still have the possibility of hacking and foreign interference. You now have the president asking people to go and intimidate and harass people at polling places. And here's what's key, right? What did we see at the beginning of the pandemic? You saw white nationalist groups and you saw neo-Nazis marching in and intimidating entire state houses in Michigan. What happens if you're, a 55-year-old, married mother of two and you're a poll worker? What happens when 15 Proud Boys show up outside your house? You're not going back to work the next day. Like, that's what makes this so dangerous. The fraud is being committed on the part of Republicans, and they hope that keeps people from voting.
Matt Miller, I want to talk about the real political impact, though, potentially on the other side. I said this a few months ago because I heard it from some Senate campaign strategists who still work on Republican campaigns, that his assault on the mail-in vote was very likely going to cost the Senate Republicans the majority. It's now bearing out. I think time has proven that fear rational. I think there's a lot of other things playing into it, like the extraordinary abuse of power and hypocrisy they're displaying around the Supreme Court process. But I wonder if you think there's some silver lining in that Trump is going to so dissuade the Republican mail-in vote in places he needs it that he may harm himself and Senate Republicans.
I do, but I want to say something about your last question to Jason first, and the clip you showed from the Attorney General first, because when you see voter intimidation, if you see the Proud Boys, you see other right-wing groups, you see Trump supporters show up at the polls to intimidate voters, you know who it's supposed to be that stops that from happening? It's supposed to be the Justice Department. The Justice Department has a long history of running election day programs where they have hotlines for voters to call, where they have hotlines from election officials to call, where local U.S. attorneys and local FBI agents will stop voter intimidation and arrest people and charge them with crimes. And if you watch Bill Barr in that clip or on the rest of the media tour he's been conducting, and you watch what the Justice Department did in Pennsylvania last week, where they blew up this false claim of voter fraud, it is impossible to have any confidence that they're going to behave that way on Election Day. And I think that is, that is the thing, is that the backstop that's supposed to exist doesn't exist this year. The anecdote, however, may be, to your point, that what the president has done by discouraging people from voting by mail is going to so drive down turnout, especially among senior voters who might support him, who don't think that their votes will be counted if they cast them by mail, and then don't come out to the polls for Election Day. It'd be, I think it's terrible if anyone doesn't vote when they should. But it may have the effect of the president depressing turnout among his supporters. And that's why I think what Joe Biden said last night is the anecdote to all of this. The anecdote to all this is for people to vote and make this election result so clear and resounding that it's not close enough for the president to steal. It's not close enough for him to contest, that the results are overwhelming and he has to leave office.
It's so amazing. I mean, that was the private ambition of the Biden candidacy months ago. It is now spilled into public because of the antics of Donald Trump. Because Claire, Jason, and Matt are exactly what we all need today, they are staying put. When we come back, Donald Trump made it clear again last night that spreading conspiracy theories about a coup is, for some reason, a big part of his reelection